Yeah, it's streaming. It's streaming now, Councillor, if you want to carry on with the meeting.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Councillor Eddy has given his apologies. I'm not aware of anybody else that has given apologies.
Can I confirm that Councillor Payne is a substitute for Councillor Eddy?
Yes. I understand that Councillor Payne, you'll be joining us on a permanent basis. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Well, welcome anyway. Item number 2, public access. Don't think there is any.
No, I'm not aware of any, Chair.
No.
Can I also ask that the next item is actually declarations of interests? It's not on the agenda, but I think it's good practice to see if anybody has formally got any interests or any conflicts in relation to any matters on the agenda.
Okay, yes, sure. Well, I'll ask, has anybody any interest to declare on any item that's on the agenda today?
Not from me, no.
Anybody?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
I'll just ask, and it probably is a technical question, Dave, with regards to Chris is a retired firefighter, retired fire officer. As a recipient of the pension scheme, would it be appropriate to record that? And would you normally do that, Chris? Is that something that you would normally do? Forgive me, excuse my ignorance.
Which Chris you talking to now?
Sorry, Chris Taylor.
Yeah.
Funny.
Since I've become retired, I don't think we've had any meetings because they keep getting cancelled. So it's probably the first one. I'm not too sure now. I can't remember the last time we went to one. But I know I was asked when I retired if I would continue on the board, which I obviously said yes, I'm fine with that. So unless anyone's got anything to the contrary on that, I'm quite happy to carry on sitting on the board.
No, absolutely.
Can I come in on that, Mick?
Yeah,
my understanding is that membership of the scheme doesn't preclude you, but it's good practice just to note it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my point. Yeah, thank you. So I think, Chris, I think it'd be helpful if you just declare an interest that you are a recipient of the pension scheme itself.
Oh yeah, definitely, yes. Hopefully, I'm still the recipient of it. I was last month.
Okay, fine. Well, take it that's been noted then. Item 4 now. No, sorry, item 3.
Item 3.
Now becomes 4. Minutes of the last meeting. And they're somewhere, I'm sure.
Can you go through it first for accuracy, Chair, and then if it's agreed, any matters arising not dealt with in the agenda. Can I also ask, is anybody taking any minutes today?
Yeah, I think, sorry, Chair.
Claude, are you doing minutes? Yes, Claudette's doing the minutes today.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I wonder if it might be helpful for everybody to introduce themselves.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm Chris Windows. I'm a Bristol City Councillor for Henbury. Can we go on to Vaughan? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Vaughan Jenkins. I'm managing the Zoom meeting on behalf of Emma, who's got a personal commitment.
Thank you. Claudette?
Good afternoon, Chair. Committee. My name is Claudette Campbell. I'm from Democratic Services, Bristol City Council.
Thank you. I see, Chief, you're next on my screen. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself? Not that you need any introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, committee. I'm Mick Crenner. I'm the Chief Fire Officer and Chief Exec of Avon Fire and Rescue Service. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate, I see next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate Shaw and I'm the Technical and Compliance Advisor for the Avon Pension Fund.
Thank you very much. Jeff from Bath.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Board. My name's Jeff Cleek. I'm the pensions manager for the Avon Pension Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Hi, my name's David Daycock, and I'm Deputy Monitoring Officer and Clerk to the Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Payne?
Hello, I'm Robert Payne, a member of the Fire Authority, and I'm from North Somerset Council, and I'm Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, my name's Chris Taylor. I'm a retired fire officer and a recipient of the Firefighters Pension Scheme.
Thank you. Angie?
Afternoon, I'm Angie Feeney. I'm the Temporary Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. Lynn?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lynn Lamb, Finance Manager at Avon Fire.
Thank you. Danielle?
Hi, I'm Danielle Neal. I'm the new Treasurer.
Gary looks different to the last time I saw him.
I am here and I'm still trying to get this video. If I leave, I may have to rejoin because it's not letting me change anything until I quit. But yeah, I'm Gary Spindler. I'm a Brigade Secretary for the Fire Brigade Union, obviously representing employees.
Thank you, Gary. Steve?
Good afternoon, Steve McGreevy. I'm Chair of Avon Fire Brigade Union, and I serve as Watch Manager at Temple Fire Station.
Fine. Thank you very much. So I think that's everybody now. Is there anybody I've missed? It's not deliberate? No. Okay, fine. Thanks very much. Good to know who everybody is. Now, we go back to the minutes of the last meeting of this committee. Are there any points of accuracy that anybody would like to raise?
Sorry, Chair, can you just go through it page by page that it is accurate, or are you happy just to...
Well, I could if I could find it again on my computer. So have you got it in front of you, David?
Shall I do it, Chair?
Yes, please, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Page 4. Page 5.
Dave, on page 5, although I wasn't at the meeting, there's a typo in 13.3. I assume it should read the TCA confirmed that Avon has commenced analysis, and I think the V might be missing, and I think the have needs to be changed to a has.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Can I just interject there? Sorry, I do apologise. That should read Aon. It's Aon was a professional organisation that undertook the benchmarking exercise. So the minute is correct.
Okay. So perhaps have they got a longer name? Should we put that?
No, they are Aon.
So maybe put in brackets something that they're advisors, and then people don't think it's just a typo for Avon. Don't know.
Are you happy to insert that, Chair?
Yeah, happy with that. If everybody else is happy.
Pithily call them pension advisors.
I think they're scheme actuaries.
Okay, so we'll add scheme actuaries in brackets after it, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, happy with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, page 6. Okay, page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10.
Yeah, sorry, Dave and Chair, there is a typo on page 10 under administration report. 1, 3, 4, 5th line down. It says was to be increased form 0.5 FTE to 1 FTE. So I think that should be increased from.
I think that's probably correct.
Right, so it's from and 0.5 to 1, is that correct?
Yeah. So,
okay, so it's just from instead of form.
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody, yeah.
Thank you. Page 11. And finally, page 12. Okay, thank you. Chair, if you can invite any matters arising. Oh, sorry, yes. Can you resolve as a meeting that that's a true and accurate record?
Right. Is everybody happy that that is a true and accurate record? Anybody not happy? That's probably easier. No? Okay. Then can we go to matters arising, David?
Okay. Again, very briefly, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Page 11.
11, yeah.
The reference, the Treasurer informed the board that the website will be up and running soon and asked for a definite date, and we'd get back to the members within 28 days. I'm not aware that that's been followed up.
The website is live
for firefighters.
Yes.
Because that okay. That hasn't been, or it doesn't appear to be, or members don't have the link for that information in the same way that we've been discussing having those projections.
No, this is the website, not the member self-service.
Yeah, so I understand that those two were sort of like a little bit confused and it was several meetings ago, but have we got an update on having that self-service website?
I can come on to that on my report.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Any other points arising? Okay, Chair, if you're happy with that, the minutes have been deemed to be a true and accurate record and no further matters arising.
Okay, thank you. I can sign them as a true record. Okay, thank you very much. That's right, I'm going back 3 minutes. I'm sorry, it's a bit of an old-fashioned way of doing it, but there we go. Right. The next item is update on TOR. It's a verbal update by yourself, I think, David, is it?
Thank you, Chair. Much looking forward to this. Very briefly, what I've been provided is I think a draft update to the terms of reference. I think probably Jeff has put together, which we're hoping to take to the Fire Authority on the 16th of July, basically to get it up to date and to make it much more user-friendly and fit for purpose. I understand that this has been put together following advice from the Pensions Advisory Board and pensions advisors, etc., to make sure it's very much in kilter with what other fire authorities have. I'm more than happy just to flag up a couple of areas that I think we need perhaps to agree today that we can take forward to the Fire Authority. But before I do that, perhaps Jeff could talk us through the genesis of it and the background, if he's happy to do that.
I'm quite happy to make a comment, and that comment is that I didn't put that together. That template document has been put together by the Scheme Advisory Board and the regulator.
Okay. So
this is the document that's being issued and was issued in June last year, which I think it was actually circulated, I think, at that time to the Fire Authority with the suggestion that that needs to be looked at as a term of reference for the Fire Authority. So it's really for the Avon Fire Authority to consider whether it wishes to adopt that. I think the recommendation is that it should consider that.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jeff. Forgive me my ignorance. The version I've got, there are some aspects of it which are not filled in. But if that's already been done, then I'm more than happy just to move on. But can someone confirm to me that, for example, under membership, we've got a specific insert there. And for example, will we allow substitute members and things of that nature? So I don't know if any of the other officers are able to help me, or possibly Mick, if you can do that.
I think that's really for the Fire Authority and the Pension Board and the scheme manager to work through. I mean, the document itself is a template to be reviewed, and I think it probably hasn't actually been reviewed. So I would suggest it's reviewed by the scheme manager with the Fire Authority, and then brought and presented to the board as a document to be adopted.
Okay, thanks. I was under the impression that perhaps the Pensions Board would make a recommendation on to the Fire Authority as to how they felt it should be put together, but I'm more than happy to leave it to be fleshed out at the Fire Authority on the 16th and then reported back.
I think in fact, David, you are right that it is supposed to be presented to the Fire Authority by the Pension Board. I could be wrong, but that was my impression.
Mm-hmm.
So you are correct, Chair. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, go on, Dave.
Sorry, my only point was, sorry, I don't think the document has actually been seen by anybody yet.
All right. Well, I was under the impression you'd all had a copy of this with your papers. The problem is, therefore, that I'll be talking to something that perhaps members of the Pension Board may be ignorant of. So in that case, are you prepared to go ahead with that today? But the difficulty is, if we don't do it today, then it won't probably go before the Fire Authority on the 16th.
Any comments?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I think what's happening here is that there was an existing terms of reference for the committee, and there was a draft template which has come from the Scheme Advisory Board. The role, what we need to undertake here is to combine the two to make sure that the new terms of reference, if you like, is fit for purpose. We will undertake that. Somebody just disappeared off my screen. We will undertake that work. Now, the two choices here, with the committee's permission, we can update that and then take that to the Fire Authority in July. Or if you want to bring it back here, then we can do that as well, and then take it to the Fire Authority in September. I think I'm, comfortable and happy either way, and I'll take guidance and a steer from the committee today. I think it's fairly straightforward. I think that the template itself is fairly straightforward, and I think it's just a matter of cross-mapping it with our current terms of reference in terms of, the membership and the amount of times that you meet and so on and so on. So I think it's fairly simplistic.
I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I'll go either way on it, but I think the sooner we can get one sorted, the better. But we haven't got another meeting, I think, until next January, unless we have a special one. So, either way depends on what everybody feels.
Chair, if I mean, obviously the initial terms of reference for this board was really as a scrutiny board. There was no decision making, no affecting anything how the pension was run. It's purely a scrutiny board. Is that fundamental need? Has that changed in the new terms and references? Is there anything added that is conflicting with that?
So it might help if I go back a little bit. I mean, I wasn't at the last pension board, but I think what I tracked back from there is that there seems to be a discussion at that last board, which was April, which was talking about terms of reference and some suggestions from this group around changing terms of reference. So that's what gave rise to that being on the agenda, because there was actually then going to be an update, which was, well, in the passage of time, what actually happened was that the Fire Authority agreed a new constitution, and it was just to bring that to the attention of the board that had been approved by Fire Authority. And that has the one where we have the pension board both in January and July. However, in the process of preparing stuff for this meeting and checking that the ones that were signed up with the Constitution last October were still live, a conversation with Jeff and I identified that actually there'd been some further guidance from the regulator since then, indicating that actually the terms of reference in our constitution were a little out of date. The main changes on those ones were around the statement of purpose. And actually it kind of reduces down from what is in the current constitution, which is a long list of things, to a main statement of purpose, which I'm happy to read out because it is relatively short, if that would help with this conversation and with your query there, Gary.
Yeah, I'm more. I mean, I doubt very much whether it fundamentally changes, which is obviously why I asked the question. My proposal is today to put forward that it goes to the Fire Authority, because on the presumption that I don't think a lot is going to change, that we will have a decision on it, if you like, or if it's come down from above, a right to remove. And if we could circulate that, and if there is any real issues, that they be raised before the Fire Authority.
Yeah,
just to give some time to look at it before it actually does go. But as I say, today make the decision that unless there is anything that people object to between now and then, it can just go forward.
It might be helpful, Angie, if you could do as you suggested and read that out, so everybody's got something to go on, and it might help Robert as well, because he wasn't at the previous meeting, and these meetings can be quite difficult to follow anyway, especially when you haven't got a very good chair, but there we go. But if you could do that.
Oh, sorry, I realised I was holding the paper up in front of my camera there, so that's why you couldn't see me on the piece of paper. So
I thought you were supposed to read it, Ange.
My piece of paper, so that's fine. So I've got my lenses in, Gary, so it's all right. I don't need to have it too far of a distance from me for this one. So you'll remember that the previous objectives for the LPB, there were lots of them, and it talked about our pension statements timely and accurate, and it was a long list of them. The new recommendations from the regulator is that the statement of purpose is as follows. So the purpose of the board is to assist, and in this case it's Avon Fire and Rescue Authority, as scheme manager of the firefighters pension scheme. Such assistance is to 1, secure compliance with the regulations, any other legislation relating to the administration of the scheme, and requirements imposed by the pensions regulator in relation to the scheme, and 2, ensure the effective and efficient governance and administration of the scheme. So that is when Jeff and I kind of looked at it, the main changes, which is actually, I think, sort of more captures what this board is about, kind of in a nutshell. The rest of them were more sort of minor when you go through them. Those were the more substantive ones to discuss here, but of course, happy to circulate that as the way that's been suggested.
Any comments from anybody?
Yeah, can I come in, Chair? That's fine, but as I say, on the version I've got, there are a couple of things that are just left blank. And if you're going to take it forward to the Fire Authority, we need probably to agree something to put in there. For example, under membership, point 6, it says substitute members will or will not be permitted. Do we want to allow them or not? It's a sort of black and white answer there, really.
Right, if I can come in on that, David. My experience of being on this committee, and I suspect that Chris and others may feel the same way, is that it can be quite complicated, and to have substitute members can be quite difficult unless they're actually sit in on the meetings themselves, if you understand me, because then they'll be able to sort of step into somebody else's shoes and we'll be up to date on it.
Yeah, I agree with the chair, to be fair. I think a substitute member would be very difficult to understand some of the detail of what's been going on in that term. So other than the fact that someone needs someone to sit there to say that they've got a representative, in this sort of meeting, I don't think it's that important, really, because it's not a decision-making body as such. It's just like Gary was saying earlier, it's more scrutiny than anything else. So people who know and have had that small, very small, Chris, amount of training, they'd be the ones to be able to do that scrutiny.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't know what other people think.
Chair.
Sure.
My view would be, I think it would be, I think it's always beneficial to meet and discuss something, even as I say, if there's no decisions. But maybe if we did allow a substitute to attend, however, not to count on the numbers if it was to make the meeting quorum or not. So therefore, to allow a discussion to go on, however, it not be recognised as quorum if that substitute was needed. Because as Chris said, you know, we've all had to undergo training to be on this board, and obviously the substitutes probably wouldn't have, which may throw into question any issues that are raised by someone who hasn't had that training.
Yeah.
If I can come in on that, if the quorum is only 3, so you should be able to meet the quorum. If you say substitutes are not allowed, you should be able to meet the quorum, I would imagine, relatively easily. But I don't think you can deem someone to be a member and come along, but not fulfill the role of a member, if you follow me. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the right terminology would be to attend as an observer.
Well, that's...
Which is, I understand your position, David, which is as good as not being in attendance, isn't it?
So
I think the issue is around the guidance and the requirement for people to have training to take the seat as specified. If they haven't fulfilled that requirement, I don't know where that leaves the Fire Authority or the board for further scrutiny. That's my only concern.
Anybody else wish to comment? Chief?
I think given the nature of the meeting, it makes substitutes very difficult, I've got to say, because you do need to have experience, you do need to have training, and actually we need to ramp up our training provision as well, don't we, to make sure that all of the committee or board members are fully au fait with, you know, legislative changes and so on and so on. I do think that it does make it difficult with substitutes. Of course, it's a matter for the board to decide. I think what we're agreeing here really is that no substitutes. I think is really settling written in terms of the feel of the room. We're probably heading towards no substitutes.
Well, that's the impression I'm getting. But we say no substitutes. But does anybody else wish to come in with an alternative view, if you like? If I don't, yeah, David.
Okay, I'm happy to put that forward to the Fire Authority. Substitute members will not be permitted under paragraph 6, if that's you're happy with that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we need to go over the next page. How many members be representatives? Well, that's 2 normally. Are you happy to continue with that?
Yeah, I think so.
That's members of the Fire Authority, councillors, in other words, yeah?
Robert, you got any thoughts on that?
No, not really. I think if we've had 2 up to now, I would say we can continue with that.
Yeah, we've actually had 2 and an observer, I think. But I think, I'm not sure actually whether or not you've taken over, Robert, from the observer, or whether Councillor Eddy was the observer.
I think that Councillor Shern was on this before, wasn't he? Is that right?
Yeah.
And he's no longer a member of the authority. So I think I'm stepping in for him.
You're right. You're in the hot seat then. In that case,
I think that's right. I mean, I only found out about it this week, so I'm really a bit you know, unsure about it. But that's what my understanding is.
Get on well with the chair then. Fine. We stick with where we are at the moment then, David, I think.
Okay, that's fine. And then employer representatives, again, they're asking for a number. I again would suggest you stick with 2, which is what you've got at the moment.
Yeah. Chris, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that, obviously, but the question is whether you want me to stay on the committee or not as a retired person now. I'm quite happy to do so, but it's entirely up to the rest of you, because it's my understanding now that Steve has taken over as the second member of the employees. Is that correct?
We introduced him as an observer with the proviso that obviously, as we've just discussed, it's important to gain as much knowledge of how and what these issues are, Chris. So yeah, you're kind of right. He's ready to step in if you feel the need to step away.
Sorry, can I just clarify? This document, they've used the word member representative. I think it means member of the scheme. In other words, employees. I took it to mean member, as in member of the fire authority. So apologies for that. So what we've now we're looking at is, we've moved on. We're looking at members of the authority. Are you happy for 2 from each? I think is probably the easiest way to state it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's another category then, which is other members, and you can have people from outside of those categories, but it shouldn't be more than 4. Are you happy to leave it at 4 or 3 or whatever number you feel appropriate?
It seems to have worked up till now. Anybody else got any comments?
I'm happy for it to stay as it is, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
So what have we got now, if you don't mind me asking? Is there a limit now?
The original, if I may, the original was 2 members of the scheme.
Mm-hmm.
That was myself and Gary.
Gary, yeah.
And 2 members of the authority, which was originally Councillor Jackson and Councillor, Chris. You've been there forever, I think, same as me.
Almost.
And then the rest of the people coming in were not so much observers. They were experts in their fields, such as Jeff and obviously corporate services who were supporting us, support services, as it was known when I was in the job, were supporting us. And obviously the chief was there as well for his input. That's how it was originally.
Can I come in?
Obviously, David, with yourself as the clerk as well.
Yeah, I don't think they mean officer advisors here. I think it means other people who maybe have an interest in the scheme who can also be on this particular board. But again, Jeff might be able to shed some light on that. Is that what they think in this context, Jeff?
I think looking at it from a local government point of view, within that cohort, you're looking at professional advisors or independent members who have got no association with the LGPS, so no association with the fire authority or the members of the fire authority. So I think at the moment, you as a fire authority board, you haven't had any additional members. You've only had the employee and the member reps, and then the officers supporting it.
So do you want to put a number in or not? As a maximum, you don't have to fill it, but as a put a number in.
My own feeling is leave it as it is, not put a number in.
Okay.
Chair, I suppose my only suggestion would be that it couldn't outnumber any of the other groups. So if the maximum on the other side is 2, then it should probably be 2 then.
Any thoughts?
I don't think we've used it until now, have we?
Why do you actually need any other members at all? Can't we just leave it with the 2 and the 2? And if we've never used it in the past, why is the facility even there?
My recommendation would be that we leave the membership as it is, and as it has been, because I think everybody is comfortable with that, the employer's side and the employee's side. Of course, you're going to get officers supporting. And of course, you may get specialists that come in and provide specialist advice, but they come in as advisors. So I would record that as a membership of the board, and it sits within the terms of reference as it has up to now. That's what I would recommend.
No, so I would go along with that. I think the chief's absolutely right. I'd go with that unless anybody wants to jump up and down and say no.
So, Chair, just to clarify, you don't want any figure put into that, just leave it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. The other one is quite an interesting one. It's the appointment of a chair. Now, for example, in Mid and West Wales, you have an independent chair who's an expert in pension matters to actually run and facilitate the holding of the meeting itself for the pension board. I've checked on the legal position. I don't think that's a legal requirement. It's just good. Some people think it's good practice or not. The good side is that they have a lot of expertise normally in pensions issues. The downside is that you normally got to pay them probably a couple of £1,000 a year. So the issue you've got to decide today is, do you want to go down that route, or do you want to stay with the appointment of chair being rotated amongst the members of the board itself or the panel itself?
Chair, if I may, I think funds are quite tight, and I think we're quite happy with how it works.
I've gone off.
I think I mean, joking aside, the fact that the board, as I say, isn't necessarily a decision-making board. It is a scrutiny board. It is quite a small group, and the decision from the start to alternate the chair was quite an easy one, and it keeps information quite tight. And I don't really see the need for an independent chair due to the nature of what's discussed.
I would agree with that. Anybody else differ?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that if we need advice from a professional, then we can get it. You know, having him chairing the meeting would not really be necessary.
Okay, thanks. And are you happy to keep it that you, as members, appoint your own chair on rotation? Yeah, the members of the board.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
you fine with that?
That's fair.
Yeah.
You carry on, Chris. You're doing a sterling job.
Who said that?
Okay. The good news is we leap forward now to point 25 of these model terms. As far as I can see, if there's anything I've missed, let me know. It says that the term of office must be longer than 12 months to allow you to get experience, up to a maximum. Do you want to stipulate a maximum term that someone can serve as a member of the board?
Chair, I was not having any specific issue. Maybe for governance reasons, that will refer back to some of the Fire Authority practices and maybe mirror some of that.
Yeah, it's 8 years, I think, as a member of the Fire Authority is the maximum you can serve.
It would just, as I say, I'm not saying whether I agree or not with what the Fire Authority governance is, but it just seems good practice to fall in line with that.
Yeah, Fire Authority governance is 8 years as a Fire Authority member, which is 2 electoral cycles, and it's 6 years as a chair of a committee or chair of the Fire Authority as a limitation.
Are we happy to mirror the Fire Authority, yeah?
I'm happy, everybody else happy?
Chair, can I come in?
Yeah, sure.
As a member that may have in excess of 20 years to serve left of my career, I may be in the position where I may be the representative. So the length of service that we have to provide now may determine how long we may get to represent. So the position that somebody may sit in as far as the union is concerned, may exceed the tenure that you're suggesting that sits on this committee now, which may be an issue in the future.
Yeah, that's a good. Sorry, Chair, if I may, that's a good point. I suppose from the elected point of view, as brigade officials and employee representatives, although we are elected, our governance doesn't mirror that. Which may cause a problem, as if the one union official is also trained in pensions, there may not be another educated official to take his place. Honestly, I didn't think of that. Thank you, Steve.
That's a good point. As far as I'm concerned, I can't see any reason why it can't apply to elected members. But as far as effectively, I suppose for instance, Chris and Gary, and anybody that takes their place, I can't see that they should have a limit applied to them for any reason.
Okay, Chair, I'm happy to go along with that. So there's a restriction for 8 years on local authority members, but on members of the scheme, the employees, if you like, there's no restriction.
Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to come back to the point, whether or not you want a retired firefighter on the committee or not, as opposed to now having Steve step in my place for me to step back. I don't mind either way. I quite, you know, are willing to stay, but it might be more beneficial for yourselves because you're in contact with each other easier with having Steve take over officially as the second employee member, or as we said at the very beginning, member of the scheme to sit on there, if you knew what I mean. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And
Sorry.
that would follow with the decision that has just been made around other members.
Yeah.
So that would follow with that decision that we then have the 2 employee reps with Gary and Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but surely retired members of the scheme are still classed as members of the scheme, aren't they?
I would think so.
Yeah. So members of the scheme, but not necessarily members of this board. What we're talking about is who are members of the board, of this board committee.
Well, perhaps I could ask Chris, do employees still talk to you as you're now sort of out on a limb, so to speak?
Yeah, a certain amount of people do, but what I'm trying to make the point is, initially, they asked me to stay on the board because of the training aspect and that I'd had the training and I had the knowledge. I have now been retired for 3 years, so I should imagine that Steve's got a little bit more knowledge of the new pension scheme, especially what's going on at the moment with looking at the agenda with things, whether or not you're going to get a big bill for the fire authority, etc., etc. He'll probably know more about it than I do now because I've been out of the game for 3 years. Like I said, I'm quite happy to help the fire authority in any way I want because they give me a good living for a long time. But it might be more beneficial now for Steve to step up into that position rather than me to be ringing Gary up a month before the meetings to try and update myself on what's new, as opposed to Steve knowing automatically, if that makes sense for you and the rest of the members.
What about Steve? Does it make sense, Steve?
Yeah, I'm happy to step up if Chris feels that's the right thing to do.
Chair, if I may, for me, this is a matter for the Fire Brigade Union because in principle, there is nothing, no issue with a retired person who is retired from the service but is a member of the scheme being a member of this board. But there are 2 spaces which are there for the Fire Brigade Union, and it's up to you to appoint those people. So I would suggest it's a decision and a conversation between you 3, to be honest, and nominate and appoint the person or people that you think are appropriate.
I think that's a very good idea, Chief.
Can I come in, Chair? I think that's right. But there's no scope for any other members now. You've opted out of that. You're quite clear about that point, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 members of the fire authority or 2 members of the scheme is all you're allowed as members of the board.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I think it's better if I was to step down and let Steve take over as that permanent member of the board.
Okay.
Okay.
All happy with that?
If you want an independent chair, I'm quite happy to do the independent chair's job. If you're just to enhance my pension a little bit, I don't
much money.
I would say, I mean, Chris, the reason for those that aren't aware, when all this started, and probably still to some extent now, there has been some confusion around the purpose and structure of these boards. and what their actual intention was. And it's been invaluable to have Chris with us from the start to try and get us through them early stages with his previous experience, which none of us had at that time. So I would like to put on record to thank Chris, if this means you're leaving the board, which I think is right and proper, but for all your efforts in helping us through to get to where we are now, Chris, thank you.
I think it's a very good idea, that it's what we should do anyway. He's been very helpful, very good, and I think he'll be missed. And that's no reflection on his replacement, I hasten to add.
Especially missed our little trips to Dorchester, Councillor.
Oh, please don't remind me about that. COVID-19's bad enough without that.
We'd all nearly forgotten about that.
I tried to.
Okay, Jay, happy for you to move on?
Yep.
Too much information. Meetings. It says the minimum number. They recommend quarterly meetings, but you could insert, I would suggest at least 2, possibly 3, but you could go for 4, which is the recommended minimum a year.
Okay, what's other people's feelings on that? Chris? That's me.
Yes. I mean, Chair, if I may, I mean, I'm happy with the number that we have. Given the nature of let's say what we can discuss, I don't think more frequent meetings are going to be that beneficial with the slow pace of how things get decided centrally from government, which is, you know, more or less the only things that externally come into this meeting. Some of our local issues with our local pension provider, you know, we can sort out and do on a daily basis. Thank you very much, Kate, for last week.
I think that's right. If for any reason we do need to have an extra meeting, then whoever the chair is can call an extra meeting and we can deal with it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy with 2 then, Chair?
Yep.
2 meetings a year. And are you happy for normal office hours, or do you want them in the morning or the afternoon? It asks for specific time between the hours of.
Depends if we're still doing it on television or if we're actually meeting somewhere. Do we have to say when we want them?
I'd say just put in normal office hours and leave it at that, and you pick a time.
I'm happy with that. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, thank you. And then last couple of ones, a quorum. Really, I think I'd recommend you stick with what you've got, which is 3.
Yep.
Yep.
Happy with that, Chair?
Yep.
And as far as I can see, I'm sure you'll let me know if I got it wrong. That seems to be about it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else. Okay, fine. So let's just recap on this. We've got that. That's going to be presented to the next full fire authority, yes?
Yes, on the 16th.
Right, that's fine. Okay.
And obviously, sorry, Chair, and if you want to change it in future, you can, you know, bring this back and do it again. So it's not in tablets of stone.
No. Okay. Thank you for that. Let's
you all agree? Right. Thanks.
The next item is regulatory update. Regulatory update. Who knows anything about that?
Yeah, that's me.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. A regulatory update has been included in the papers for noting and gives you the position on key issues at the end of April 2020. There's been little movement on regulatory issues over the last couple of months due to the current situation with COVID-19. However, there has been a lot of guidance and advice issued from numerous sources in relation to pension schemes and how they should operate during the pandemic, all of which we've taken on board. Since the report was submitted, there's just a couple of updates to make you aware of. Firstly, we're expecting the Treasury consultation on the remedy required to remove age discrimination in the uniform public sector schemes to be issued by the end of July. And then following that, it's anticipated we may need to carry out a further options exercise. And this is in respect of retained firefighters who were permitted to backdate their membership of the 2006 scheme. So this is following another court case known as the Matthews case. And this was in respect of a part-time fee paid judge who argued that pension scheme membership should have been backdated to the start of his employment and not the 1st of July 2000, as was done so in the original exercise. But we're awaiting further guidance and clarification as to whether this will apply also to the fire scheme. Finally, I just wanted to mention that a summary of the monthly LGA bulletins, which highlight any actions that's required to be taken by fire authority and on occasion pension board members, are issued to Brigade on a regular monthly basis and can be extended to pension board members if you feel that would be helpful. But happy to take any questions on the paper. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Kate?
No, if those could be forwarded to the board members, okay, I think that would be most helpful. I know the pension scheme bulletins are very helpful to members, and on occasions we definitely share some of the information within that. So yeah, I think that can only be beneficial, can't it?
Yeah, and definitely I can make sure that that happens for you, and it'll keep you up to date more regularly rather than 6 months worth of updates
in one go. Yeah.
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 Thank you. Thank you. And any other questions for Kate? Okay, well, thank you for that. And if you do, if you can pass it around to members, the details that you've just given us, be very, very useful.
Yeah, we'll do, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to go and see if I can find the agenda again now. I think it's halfway up my wall.
Pension board issues, Chair.
Ah, right. Pension board issues.
And
right.
The first one is local pension board risk register.
Right. Okay. Are you going to do that, Jeff? Or
I don't think so. I don't know. I'm hoping somebody else will.
I think it's me. It's Lynn.
Right.
Is it? Oh dear. You got
Sorry.
the short.
So basically the risk register is, we should have a copy of it in the papers, I hope. It's something that we bring before, it's part of the normal business that we bring to the local pensions board each meeting. At the last meeting, I think there was one change to risk. It's in the minutes that risk 8, failure to employ to pay contributions to the scheme. We had found that there was an error in contributions being paid over to the scheme on one of the pension funds 2015 scheme, which had a small effect on the scheme and a very small effect on the members involved. So we decided, or the board decided to change that risk to minor and possible. Sorry, just getting back to the paper. So we have a number of risks on there to do with operations, financial, funding, and regulatory and compliance. And they all have their own, we've got a table on page 2 of the impact and likelihood, and each risk is given a score. And we have mitigations, who owns that risk. And it's whether we want to, or you want to, change any of those risks, particularly in light of COVID-19, which I think really is sort of business continuity operations at the moment. And I think a lot of that is already covered in other, in the risk register as it stands. So it's whether anyone has any comments or suggestions of changes they might like to see for discussion.
Chair, just in relation to what the update that Kate just gave us, and the ongoing court case, if that affects and is proven to affect some of our RDS members, then I think that would that be a risk, a financial risk?
I think, from my knowledge of the firefighter schemes, the firefighter schemes are non-funded schemes, which means that the government effectively backs the schemes. So shortfalls are covered by the government, but I might be wrong about that in total. Sorry.
You're partly correct. I think there's definitely a financial, well, there is some financial impact on the service because, I mean, I know when the modified pension scheme was introduced, it was as a massive undertaking trying to track people, especially RDS members, track people and get relevant information. And if we're going to have to go through the same process again, in theory, that is going to create a lot of work, and I don't see how that can go unrecognised.
Yes. Sorry, I was not picking up quite what you were meaning there. Yes, I think yeah, we have had discussions with Jeff and people at Baines about the fact that it would be quite costly to do all those calculations. And until we know what remedy has been decided, then we're a little bit of a loss to actually know exactly what we need to do for that remedy and how much it will cost. I think Jeff might have some, or Kate might have some other comment to make on that.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Were you referring to the remedy for the age discrimination, Gary, or of the remedy for the Matthews case?
No, the Matthews case. I mean, and that was what my point was. The age discrimination case is recognised in our risk register. I think the new case should also be part of that.
Yeah, probably because it is quite likely that we will have to carry out this exercise. And if you've got to backdate contributions, then that will be a financial implication, as well as contacting people and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah.
I'll just add to Kate to what Kate said there, Gary, and that is obviously anything that we need to do as an administrator for the Fire Authority is going to be pretty heavily labour intensive and resource intensive. So there will be a cost added in. Obviously, what we will try to do is try and work that cost out in advance. So you've got some idea of what that would be, but certainly it should go on the risk register as an increase in risk.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've made a note to change to refer to it in the register.
Okay, Lynn, thanks for that. Are you doing the voluntary scheme pays policy?
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry. Find the right paper now. Sorry. Okay, so the members might remember from the meeting last year that we had this as an item last year in the last meeting. So so a bit of background is that voluntary scheme pays. So when someone, a firefighter, exceeds their pension savings in the year, exceeds the annual allowance limit set by the government, they might not have and don't have enough sufficient unused allowances to carry forward from the previous 3 years. Then a tax charge will be made on the excess, which will be at their marginal rate of tax. So there are, as long as certain conditions are met, then the individual can elect for the pension scheme to pay their part or all of the charge on behalf of them, which will come out of their future pension. And that's known as mandatory scheme pays. And there are criteria that have to be met for mandatory scheme pays to apply. The alternative is that if the individual does not meet the mandatory scheme pays criteria, but they still wish their tax charge to be paid by the scheme, there's voluntary scheme pays. So it's generally, if their tax charge is over, sorry, lost my place. So that, sorry. So we need to have a voluntary scheme pays policy so that there's a framework for making a decision on each individual case. The Fire Authority is not compelled to agree to any voluntary scheme pays requests and can simply decide not to do so. However, where they would incur a tax liability, this may affect the decision of the firefighter whether to apply for a promotion, because the annual limit has come down to the level where it affects fairly low level promotions within the fire service at the rates of pay that apply. So the Home Office has proposed that voluntary scheme pays is used in two circumstances, which is where they have service in one of the 92 or 2006 scheme and the 15 scheme, but because they've in two schemes, they can't use the mandatory scheme pays, or where their pension growth is less than 40,000 AA limit, but more than their own tapered limit. So they're where they say that we should use voluntary scheme pays, and the paper was that the four other criteria would be on a case-by-case basis, and also whether we should, or the fire service should decide whether there should be a minimum level of tax payable for it to apply, bearing in mind that if you have a tax bill of less than 3,000, you can have it settled through your tax code over the next year. So it would seem appropriate that this minimum level of tax could be set at 2,000, bearing in mind that the reason for a tax charge is generally there's been a promotion and an increase in pay. So it's for the local pensions board to decide what recommendations it wants to make to the fire authority as scheme manager, and recommend including a minimum level of tax payable. So when this paper was brought to the local pensions board last year, there was quite a lot of talking around the subject, but a decision wasn't really made. And unfortunately, because we haven't had another meeting, we still haven't made a decision on it. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think this was set in the papers that came out. I appreciate it's difficult when I'm just talking around it, sorry.
Gary?
Yeah, if I may, Lynn, I think the reason being is because a lot of members that came to us were financially bombarded with information that, quite frankly, they didn't understand. I certainly didn't understand, was unable to offer advice. The board didn't understand, which is why we made the decision to bring in some, to go and get some financial experts to bring them in, which was brilliant. And there was some good feedback from that. However, personally, I still don't feel in a good enough place financially, bearing in mind, we're not allowed to give financial advice. It's bordering on making this decision around financial advice. And I think that is why we're struggling. So many different members have different cases and personal situations that I'm just not comfortable with the knowledge that I have to say that this remedy or this proposal would be of benefit to the vast majority of our staff. And I struggle with that. I struggle to know whether that decision is the right one or not. And some of the conversations I've had with individual members, my head still explodes with the amount of details of pensions, of loans, of interest rates, of longevity of life, etc., etc., etc. This group more than anyone understands how different pensions are to individual people. I struggle to know how we come to that decision.
Yeah, I think I did actually, funnily enough, have a conversation with a firefighter yesterday, and he seemed to be quite clear in his mind that because if you have the tax paid out of the scheme, then that affects your pension for the rest of your life after you retire. So you sort of make that bet as to whether you're going to survive for a short enough time for it to be worth your while to have it paid through the scheme, or whether you're going to be financially a lot worse off because you'll survive for so long that you'll have paid back far in excess of your tax charge. And the individual I was speaking to actually said that interest rates are so low at the minute, he would just go out and borrow the money and then pay it back out of his lump sum.
Exactly.
And this is a matter of personal choice, isn't it? I think the whole purpose of this policy was to provide people with a choice. So mandatory pays is fairly easy because it's like something you've got to have, and it's a facility that the scheme will pay your tax bill, but you will have to pay that back, of course, over the life that you're collecting your pension. But with the voluntary scheme pays, there's lower. And what's more, it's probably for people that are not able to afford a lump of a tax bill at that time. But of course, it is up to the board to decide as to whether you want to offer that facility to people or not. Gary, you're absolutely right. We don't offer advice and we're not able to, and we shouldn't be.
I think
people should take independent financial advice for that. But what this is a facility that the board could offer to staff if they wanted to take it. It wouldn't be a recommendation. It would be a facility that you could offer if people wanted to take a voluntary scheme pays mechanism to assist by paying their bill. So it's for members to decide. If you don't feel that we need to have that policy, then fine. But for me, it's a facility that we can offer people.
So Jeff would probably cut in here and say that we definitely need a policy because we have to have a policy. But what I was just thinking when I heard you speak, Mick, I think there's a bit of the difference between mandatory scheme pays and voluntary scheme pays. It's not mandatory or voluntary on the employee. It's mandatory or voluntary on the employer. So you can choose to pay your tax yourself or not pay your tax yourself in both circumstances. But if the firefighter comes to us and says, I want you to pay my tax bill for me, and it's paid, if it's the mandatory, then we have to pay it. The fire service has to pay it. If it's voluntary, that's where the discretion comes in as to whether the fire service does pay it. But it has the same effect. That person should take financial advice and decide whether that's the best way for them to settle that tax bill or not.
So absolutely right. Agree with all of that, Lynn. So the decision and the question is, do you want to offer a facility whereby you want to offer that voluntary scheme pays for members who have taken independent financial advice, and that facility is there? I think it's fairly straightforward, personally.
Chair?
Yeah, sure. Carry on.
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I don't. So maybe I think it's absolutely right that we provide that facility. Of course, and I think you'd expect me to agree with that. My concern is whether what we're providing is the best or the right way. Does that make sense? Absolutely. I think we should have that voluntary scheme pays. What I'm not clear about is whether I'm agreeing or potentially agreeing to the best option about providing that facility. And I have to, I don't have that financial knowledge as to whether it can be done in a better way or a different way. Does that make sense?
Jeff, can I ask what your view is in terms of whether this is a necessity or not?
Yeah, you can certainly ask that. First of all, though, I'd like to ask a question, and that is...
Sorry, Chair, I was asking a question of Jeff. Jeff Clegg.
Oh, right, sorry, Jeff. Your chair now.
My apologies, Chair. Through you, of course.
Yes.
I think certainly you do need a policy either way. I think that's very important. I am aware of other authorities where they've got a policy not to have voluntary scheme pays in place, and others, probably the majority, have a policy where voluntary scheme pays is in place. I think maybe from Gary's point of view, perhaps it might be an idea to actually seek some professional guidance on this, to perhaps guide the board, or at least be able to explain the technicalities around it from a professional point of view. Because clearly, as officers, we are unable to offer any advice around this, and it is extremely complicated. And as Gary quite rightly points out, you almost do need to be Einstein to understand the complexities of it for your own personal tax affairs. So I think it maybe the opportunity to seek some professional advice might be helpful.
Fine, thank you. I think it's an idea to seek some professional advice if we can. Do you think the LGA may be able to help in that respect? Yeah.
Sorry, can I just say the LGA have provided lots of templates as well to help you with this, and guidance. So whether that might be useful. I think, Lynn, you've got access to all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if the board members have seen that, but that might help.
I would think so myself, but what do others think?
I just to reiterate, I absolutely want the option for members to have the voluntary scheme in place. My concern is, could it be whatever we put in place, could it be improved? And that's the bit that I'm unsure about. So I definitely wouldn't want to withhold that option in the meantime, if that makes sense as well. So if we could, would it be possible, I suppose the question is, would it be possible to agree what we have, and subsequently, could that be altered or improved upon if the board found that possible?
Is it Chair?
Yeah, sure, carry on.
Hi. I say I wasn't at the last meeting, but looking at the minutes, then at the last minute you did resolve that that you wanted to do a VSP scheme, that there should be a minimum level of tax payable for the VSP to apply, and should be asked to make a contribution from their own finances towards tax incurred as a result of VSP. The main questions which seem to be there is, the first one, what should be the minimum level of tax payable for VSP to apply? The second one, which is what should members what level of contribution should members be asked to make from their own finances as a result, and in what circumstances? It's around those levels that seem to be the questions. We've heard from Lynn there a suggestion of it being sort of 2,000. Which ties in with the paper that you had at the time, which is what we're thinking about. So I suppose an option is to go with that for the time being, so at least members have some sort of provision, which they don't at the moment, whilst we look into this further advice. Where at the moment we're in this sort of strange position where at the moment it's a no because we haven't got a policy in place. Whereas even to say no, we should really have a policy in place that says no, we don't do it. So I think kind of what Jeff is saying, that we've got a gap there, that we either need a policy which says we're not going to do it, or we need to have a policy which says we are going to do it, but we have to agree those limits. And it's whether you feel comfortable today with going for the 2,000, which has been the suggestion, or whether you want to take some more time. And I suppose I'm just also thinking of your members at the moment who don't have the facility, whatever the amounts are.
Chair, if I may, Ange, thank you very much. And those are the questions that are still going around in my mind. Those questions that we couldn't resolve last time, and I still don't feel in that position. But if the recommendation has been put forward, I think my proposal is to absolutely go and agree that, but just continually try and educate ourselves as to what is in place. And every member I talk to around this issue gives me something else. It's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to, you're going to have to explain, and that's where my nervousness is around it. But absolutely, I once again, I propose that we definitely take that paper as it is and put it in place.
Sorry, Chair, can I come in?
Yeah, sure.
I'm a bit loath to do that. There's no policy in front of you at the moment, as far as I can see. So therefore, how can you recommend something that's not before you for recommendation to the fire authority. If you all know what you're on about, fine. But to me, you need to have something in front of you that you agree with, sign up to, and then you recommend that to the fire authority. And what I've got in front of me doesn't meet that criteria.
Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Dave. I think that's what I'm trying to put across. And if members have nothing, no option, then all of the people in the know, and I'm looking at at our Baines pension people and some of the people I've spoken to, having that option isn't a derogatory or a step backwards to them. They can either use it or not. At the minute, there's no option to use it. And please correct me if I've misunderstood that.
No, you're correct, Gary.
I would say, Gary, that that there's a caveat to, even if you have a policy in place which is a positive policy, there is a caveat there that member is recommended to seek independent financial advice.
Absolutely.
Always, yeah.
Right. So where does that leave us at this moment in time?
Yeah, I think, if I may, I think in terms of technicalities, Angie is absolutely right. Members have seen this policy previously. I obviously, Councillor Payne may not have done, but other members of the board, which would give you your quorum, have seen it before. And I think the proposal, after this verbal update and discussion, because I don't think there was a decision made previously, is to put that policy before the fire authority. It's only if you are comfortable with that, having seen it previously, because you need to be satisfied that that's what you want us to do, is to put it in front of the authority to make it a policy.
Okay. Anybody wish to add anything? Yeah, Angela.
Yeah, so that there was a paper before, there was a decision that the board wanted to do it, and they agreed that there should be a minimum level of tax payable for VSP, and members should make a contribution from their finances. But what wasn't agreed was what those values were on both of those two things. And therefore, that would be quite a difficult policy, I think, then to implement, because your employees don't know what levels are being talked about. So it's whether, I think there was a suggestion that it was 2,000, correct me, Lynn or Jeff, around those figures. So it's whether you're comfortable with recommending the 2,000 or whether you want to wait at the moment to have that further technical advice. But the consequence of that means is that you are in effect then saying that at the moment the fire authority don't offer, or your recommendation to the fire authority is that they don't offer this provision, because you kind of need to have one or the other.
Yeah, Gary.
I reiterate, I propose that we accept that paper that we have discussed previously. Lynn's given us some financial figures on the understanding, or I suppose with a little bit of guidance from Jeff and Kate, who deal with those sort of figures. If that makes sense, if those sort of figures make sense, are in the right ballpark, then to not provide that to members would seem a little bit wrong.
I would probably say the mandatory scheme pays is set at a minimum of £2,000, so that seems reasonable for your voluntary. It's people that don't apply in time that would not be able to use mandatory that might need to use voluntary that you need to consider, I suppose. So yeah, that would be the same as mandatory, but it would open the famous timescales.
Chair, may I suggest then that we move forward positively in that vein with the policy as discussed, and that we review it after a period of 1 year?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, I accept that. Or if any clear financial advice from any other arena means that what we've got in place is clearly, or could be improved in some way. And as you know, we've got the facility to recall either this board or give different advice to the fire authority in that time.
So, Chair, what I could suggest is that we arrange with the LGA for someone to come and talk to this group more about this scheme. And we could do that in time for what would be under the current constitution next meeting in January. And then we could look to review it in January. By that point, we'll have some information on who is or isn't applying for it. And we'll also have that advice. And then we've got a clear date then by which we're going to have another look at it.
Right. Do you happy with that, Gary?
Yeah.
Chief? Yeah. Okay. Anybody not happy with that suggestion? Okay. In which case, yeah, let's go ahead with that. Can we go ahead with that, Angie?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't realise you were talking to me. Yeah, that's fine. We can arrange something. Obviously, I need to speak to LGA, but yes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Let's see where we are now. Administration report. Is that you, Jeff?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's me indeed. Okay, so this is usually the admin performance report that's presented to the pension board on a biannual basis, which outlines the performance of the fund in administration across a number of key performance indicators, and also it reflects the information coming into the fund from, in most cases, the payroll provider, Bristol City Council. Same with everyone else. Obviously, we've undergone lockdown through COVID-19, so all officers now within the Avon Pension Fund are working remotely. Following instruction through from the Scheme Advisory Board and the TPR, focus has been around retirements and ensuring that our pensioner members are being paid. We've managed to maintain the business operations to that level. That does mean that some of our other functionality is taking a bit of a back seat to a degree, although we are still processing the other benefit cohorts at the moment. And there's no immediate sign of us returning to the office, certainly not in the next 8 or 9 months. The performance that I've within the report itself is just around our deaths and retirement cases that have taken place since the last meeting that we had. So I think the last report to the board in April 19 was up to the end of December. So this report just flags January through to the end of May, I think, which we've flagged through. So in the main, retirements are pretty much on target. We've probably been late on 3 or 4 cases so far. And we have reported a 1-day delay on the main payroll run, which was unfortunately an occurrence that happened in April. But we have since put a mechanism in place to stop that happening again. It was unfortunate it was timed due to the remote working, but there was a kind of human error and a systems issue at the same time that caused a 1-day delay. We did write to all pensioner members affected, and we have paid out any compensation where there may have been bank charges incurred. Just we'll pick up on the year-end employer performance at the moment. So as you're aware, we have a statutory requirement to issue annual benefit statements by the 31st of August and pension saving statements by the 5th, 6th of October. So at the moment, we're working with your payroll provider, Bristol City Council, to get the data in. So we're just finalising that now, doing the final reconciliation, and all being well, we'll be processing those benefit statements around mid-August. So they should be hitting doormats at the end of August. There are still a couple of little issues outstanding with the payroll provider, which we're working through at the moment. So we haven't got all the data that we've asked for, but we've been given an assurance by Bristol City Council that we will have that information by the 10th of July. And that's our absolute final date to hit our own internal targets to do all the testing to get the statements out. So that's ongoing at the moment. I will also mention, as Gary picked up on the minutes earlier, member self-service. I think, Gary, was what you were referring to, where the member actually has the ability to do some self-service on the system, looking at calculations and some updates. So this has been an ongoing saga we've had with our software provider and our own internal testing capabilities. The latest update I have from our communications manager is that the testing will recommence in August, once we've got the annual benefit statement process out of the way, and we will be liaising with the Avon Fire Authority HR department towards the end of October, November time, with a launch date of my Pension Online (MSS) in December. So that will give members the ability to go in, as I say, and do some estimates, forecasts, and projections, etc. The website, which was again back in April last year, not up and running, is now live. So that actually does across the 4 schemes give detailed sort of breakdown of how those schemes work, and also that's a communication tool for members to be able to see how their own scheme is functioning, and any updates to those schemes should be within that website. And I think you can link into that through the Fire Authority's website directly. Kate did mention earlier well, both of us mentioned the fact that potentially there will be some additional work around the cost cap mechanism, and also potentially going back further on retained members. That clearly is going to impact on our resources, as will McLeod when that comes through. So as we begin to move forward on these things, then the reports will begin to reflect what information we're picking up and running through with. But we'll be in communication with the Fire Authority on a regular basis on that, outside of this meeting anyway. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Questions from anybody? Yeah, go on, Gary.
Thank you, Jeff. The online pension service has been a bit of a saga, but I'm sure you agree it'll be a great weight off your mind when it is online, as it will members, because obviously we are going to be going through a bit of a tricky period. Have we have the developers factored in any possible remedies regarding McLeod and how that may affect? Well, I mean, what I'm trying to say, we're not going to get to December and then say, well, it was going to be live in December, but because of remedy, it's not going to be live now. Are we trying to factor in any possible remedies so that's not delayed, or is that just not possible?
So at the moment, there won't be any provision for the remedy being, in place. So when it is launched, it will be based on the regulations as they are at the moment. I know for sure that our software provider is working with the various scheme advisory boards and LGA through this. So they will be in a position to adapt the software in time to pick up the impacts of McLeod going forward. And I'm sure going forward it will just make the firefighter pension schemes even more complicated than they already are. And whoever thought they could get more complicated, but they sure will. But no, it has been disappointing from our point of view, Gary, and I do apologise that this has taken so long. It's not really the position I thought we'd be in, 18 months after the last meeting, to be honest with you. So I will make sure we are actually in place to get that launched in November, December time for you guys.
No, I really appreciate that, and I know it's not easy. My concern is probably more around member expectations, and what I don't want to do is say that it's going to be live in December, and it's going to be all working, without that caveat of the McLeod and how that may affect it. So, just if I know that is probably going to affect the usability for a lot of members, then that's just nice to know. That's all, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions for Jeff? I think that's a no. Okay, Jeff, thank you very much for that. Now we go on to item 8, which is training requirements and opportunities / annual report of activities, which is going to be from David, over to you. Microphone? Do you put your microphone on, David? Microphone, David?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
I think there's an appendix to the documentation you've got setting out training requirements and opportunities there. Obviously, all of this is going to be done remotely. I don't know what cost or whatever is entailed, but obviously it facilitates attendance. It's much easier nowadays and you can do it via Zoom. I really can't add a lot more to that other than it's a standing requirement that members of the board actually keep up to date and make sure that they are effectively trained on developments relating to pensions issues. And if members are aware of any courses or anything that's coming up that could be added to this, I think it will be sensible for them to bring it to the officer's attention. But other than that, I don't know if Lynn or anybody else could come in on that, or even Mick on this particular issue.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Chair, if I might add, on the report at item 8, there are two areas here. One is a backward-looking annual report, i.e. the training that's taken place in the last period, but then there's also a look forward in terms of the dates coming up. And I think we'll add to that as we go. I think it's quite clear we now have new members to the board. So Councillor Payne, unfortunately, there's quite a lot of training coming your way. So we will. I'll get Emma on the case in terms of looking for your personal needs and to try and work with your diary to include your work around that. We'll also enrich this as we go, members, so that we have a forward plan and an onward going and annual training program, which we'll build as we move forward. So, Jeff, could I ask a question? Would it be appropriate to include on here the training that you and your staff get as well in that regard?
Yes, sorry, Mick, yes, Chief, sorry. That's something I think would be appropriate for the board. We offer on the LGPS, we do training around governance and scheme administration. So we could do a session to the board, like a workshop perhaps, maybe before the meeting in January, we could do something for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else? Yeah, Angie.
Hi. I just wanted to check whether members are currently in receipt of the Firefighter Pensions Bulletin. One came out in June and that's got a further calendar of events and different kind of, most of them virtual at the moment, but a range of different ones. So I didn't know whether you were already in receipt of those ones, or if not, I could ask Emma to provide the details of how you get online with those bulletins.
I've seen them anyway. I get them.
Okay.
Might be an idea for Robert to get them as well.
Okay, that's fine, Councillor. I'll ask Emma to send you the details. I've got a nodding head from Gary.
Yeah, we go.
From Steve. So, Steve, do you get them?
Yeah, I receive them. Thank you.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So I'll just ask Emma to send it to Councillor Payne.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Nothing else on that particular one. Item 9 is a work programme. Who's going to jump in on that one?
Oh, it's me again. Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. Yeah, so this is basically it's a live document that we keep here internally as to the work programme that the local pensions board needs to look at. It's just whether there needs to be any changes to it. I appreciate some of the dates might need to be changed on there, I noticed. So the sort of top first page is can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My phone rang and it then sort of all went a bit strange. Sorry. Yes, and then the second page is standing items to be looked at each meeting. So basically, a lot of it is on the agenda anyway. So it's just whether anything needs to be updated on there. That anyone has any thoughts on items that we might need to have, as it's a while since we had our last meeting and had the last review of this document.
Don't all speak at once. Anybody? There seems to be a no on that one. Then, unless the chief's got anything.
You know, it's absolutely right. Those are our standing items which will come forward onto the agendas as we move forward. You know, it is, I think, right and proper now that we've had another meeting that we go through this and work towards this in terms of the work programme and update it, because there are some things in here that need updating. So we'll do that and we'll bring it forward to the next meeting and we'll review it again then, if that's okay, Chair.
That's fine, thank you. Did you wish to add anything, Gary?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the mute. It was only just obviously the risk register would be updated. And I don't know whether the other court case, the name's just dropped out of my head, that you referred to, Kate, regarding the RDS would need adding to a the work programme, or whether it would be just contained within the risk register. Because I know when it comes around, it's going to be a nightmare.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted again. I think this work programme is more for the work of this board rather than the work of the pension scheme as a whole and the manager and Baines and everyone else. It's more the things that need to be discussed in these committees.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No, okay. It's fine, thanks very much. We now go on to something else. I'm just going back up my wallpaper a moment.
Chair, there is any other item, any other business, but you shouldn't normally allow that. That's only for urgent matters.
Yes.
So if you can move on to the date of the next meeting, which has been agreed, I think, on the 19th of January.
January. Everybody free on the 19th of January? We don't know what sort of a meeting that's going to be, whether it's going to be the old style meeting where you actually talk to real people, or whether it's going to be another of these where people pretend to be there. So it'll be the 19th of January. I think we've got through a fair bit today, actually. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much to everybody for your attention and for your input. And I really look forward to seeing you on the 19th of January in one form or another. Okay, so thank you very much. Goodbye to everybody. We'll close the meeting at this point. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.